Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome back to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and joining me today is Marcia Heath. Marcia is a professional editor, writer, and founder of Bungalow Hill, a solo shop that helps creative people share their stories and their art. She's a former publicist at Simon Schuster, executive editor at Harcourt, and she spent over 2 decades in brand marketing and strategic planning at startups, nonprofits, and Fortune 500 subsidiaries. In 2024, inspired by the business model of a small surf shop in Aruba, Marcia went from a burnt-out boomer to fulfilling her lifelong dream of being a writer and publishing her first book, The Little Giant, the story of Aruba's surf shop and the rebels who built it. Marcia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm so glad to talk to you for so many reasons. You have a background that interests me so much as a English and journalism major and somebody that wants to write a book someday. But I'm also interested in your story because on paper, you had this great career, one that certainly could be considered successful. So how do you end up in Aruba, by the way, one of my favorite places, in your 60s, feeling burnt out, and then completely inspired to go on this adventure and write about a surf shop? How does that happen? Set the stage for us.
Well, that is a great question. I think that I did look successful on paper, and I'm very grateful for the career I had in corporations and small businesses, you name it, because it gave me I think a great preparation for finally doing what I wanted to do, which is write a book. But what is the expression when the student is ready, the teacher appears?
Yes.
For me, it was a very long ramp up to finding the confidence to say, I am a writer and I can do this. And I think my first, I think catalyst was when I had a breakdown in my earlier years. I had a case of global amnesia, transient global amnesia. And that's a temporary condition caused by extreme stress where you lose your mind.
Wow.
You forget who you are, you forget where you are. And I was in a great job then, to your point. I was working a successful career. And it just struck me at that moment that something is very off here, that I would lose my mind.
literally lose your mind.
Yeah. And so after that, I founded my solo shop. I decided no more working for other people. I'm going to go out on my own, which was very scary.
Yeah.
But I did end up really enjoying that freelance work with artists and painters. And then I kept being haunted by the idea of I'm helping other people tell their creative stories. But what about me? What about my creative stories that are haunting me in a way? So I ended up having more sort of self-examination during COVID, as many people did. Is this all there is?
Yes.
Is this the best I can do with the talents I was born with and the talents I developed?
Yes.
And it was like a trick knee. You know, one minute I think, yeah, I'm doing okay. And the next minute I would crash and say, this is just a compromise. I'm living a compromise. So I went to Aruba basically to escape all those dark corners that I was investigating. And I sat down under a mango tree with my late in life stepson, David. And I was thinking about snorkeling. I was thinking about having a fish sandwich. I was thinking about everything but a book. And we got talking. And that conversation got me so inspired to write basically a quest book, sort of an underdog quest book about what if we choose to choose? What if we decide to invent our own rules and form a life around what we think will make us happy versus what maybe society tells us will make us happy? So that is the premise, and the very long answer to your question, the premise for writing this book and finding myself, I think in a way I never had late in life.
Did it just come to you, like that idea and the premise? He's telling you his story or how they're doing, and it just kind of popped, and there it was. It just landed on your lap.
It was, it was one of those moments where I felt this like scalp tingling and this sort of ping went off in my mind. And it was, a voice was saying, okay, you're going to write this story. I don't know where that voice came from, and I didn't know what the story was, Marianne, at the time. I thought it was a story about a renegade, very successful, community-based business with strong values. And it turned out to be much more than that. It turned out to be an allegory, really, for going on a quest and finding what will make you happy. And it happens to be set in a surf shop, and it happens to be told by two renegade surf shop owners. But that's really not the story. It's a bigger one than that.
It feels ironic to me that you found yourself through the story.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is such a great point. And I didn't expect to learn so much about myself by writing someone else's story. And at first, actually, when I wrote the drafts, I was out of the story altogether. I was a third person narrator. And then I started sneaking myself in there a little bit. And the early beta readers said to me, this is really interesting, your own personal journey here, overused word, but basically your take on their story, they found fascinating. So it ended up being a memoir where I'm not the main character.
I have to think that at some point when you set out to do this, okay, you got the great idea and you're thinking, I'm going to write this story. Did you have that push and pull again where you're thinking, gosh, I'm this age and can I really do this? And you know what I mean? I'm thinking you had some kind of self-struggle there. Was that true, or am I making that up?
No, that it was definitely a struggle. I'd say the first struggle was coming out of invisibility. So
talk to me about that.
I was comfortable retreating into a smaller world later in my career and in life. And yet writing something like this and actually putting your name on a book is a very expressive public act. And I struggled with that. And I struggled, even being on this podcast, struggled talking about this story, because who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? Put this story out in the world. But I've learned that many people seem to really enjoy it and get something out of it. So that more than the external validation of writing a book is what keeps me going.
I love that. And I mean, you're hinting at imposter syndrome, which so many of us deal with, and feeling like, who am I to show up in this space? I'm not the expert. I don't have enough of this. I'm to that, whatever it is, right? We fill our heads with all the things, but you did push past it. So I love that part of the story. What do you say to people listening, 50, 60, 70-year-olds who feels too old to try something new, or they feel like they missed their shot? I hear from a lot of people who say, well, I always wanted to do this. I wanted to be an actress, or I wanted to do whatever it is. And often they feel like they missed the boat, right? They're older. How can they get back to that? What would you say to them?
I think it's such an individual question, but I would say that I don't think there's any age limit on turning in a new direction in your life. It doesn't have to be a grand leap from, being a W-2 earner to a global best-selling whatever. It can be some small moves that you take in a brave moment toward a life that seems to suit you better. And I think when you take the first step and you bring your friends along with you, I think that's important. In my case, I really got a lot of support from my network of friends writing this book, and they believed in me before I could.
Yes.
They saw the potential in the book before I did. And so that's the other piece of advice I'd say is bring your best pals with you on your quest, because that's going to help you a lot.
Yeah, we always talk about finding your tribe or finding your community. And sometimes that's multiple depending on what you're trying to do. But surrounding yourself with people that will push you forward and hold you accountable too when you need to be held accountable, I think that's important. But also so helpful in trying to take those leaps. Tell me about how this has opened up doors that you would have never expected, because I think one of the lessons that I've learned is to try to be less tied to the outcome and to be open to whatever may come once you start down a path. And I think that's hard for a lot of us to learn, right? We're used to like, I'm going to do A, B, C, and it's going to get me to D. I think if we can just do A and see what shows up next, I think that opens a lot of doors. Has that happened to you? Is that true with your story as well?
Very much so. In my earlier life, I was a strategic planner. I can't even say it now. And my whole role was to take chaos or grumpy people from where they were to a stronger future. And the plan to be successful had to be step by step, linear, and very clear from start to finish.
Yes.
Turn that around when you're writing a book or any new creative pursuit. It can be very chaotic and very full of unknowns. Right. And so what I learned from these two guys in the surf shop is life is one big improvisation, really. It's one big experiment. You take a step, you learn from it, you move sideways, you move back a little bit. It's a zigzag more than a linear path forward. And once I gave myself permission, I really had to do that. I had to say, look, you really don't know what you're doing in these initial drafts, but the story will emerge if you trust the process and if you keep at it and if you keep going. So that became my mantra is keep going. Do not give up on yourself or the process of writing because it's going to take you somewhere and it's going to be probably much better than you thought.
I love that nugget you dropped in there because giving yourself permission to be a novice, to be new at something, to learn as you go, so challenging, right? Because we've shown up for so many years as the expert and your position, my position, many of us, we've led people in whatever it is we do and we've been the leader. We know the steps. Then to start something that we don't know anything about and to have to just let the process unfold, you have to keep reminding yourself. So good nugget there, good reminder that you had to kind of let that unfold. So tell us a little bit about the story. Like what's different in this story and what do you think really made this so special?
Well, it's not a conventional story by any means or a conventional book, which I take some pride in because coming from traditional publishing, I had set notions of what a nonfiction book should look like and read like. But this book from the beginning started as an investigation of a big question, which is where do we find happiness, really? How do we find the courage to take a leap and find our version of happiness? That's the premise. And to unspool that, I had to really understand their story first. Of course, that's the setting for the book is Aruba. They were mavericks. They were very successful in their careers in their 20s. One was a marine scientist. The other was a lawyer. But they quit that conventional path and they went to Aruba and founded a small community-centered surf shop because of their love for the people, but also their love for surfing and ocean-going sports. And so that seemed to me, okay, how did this play out? What did they do right? What did they do wrong, according to the experts? So throughout the book, I bring in the voices of experts in success, neuroscience, finding your own path. People like Esther Perel is in there, Adam Grant, Malcolm Gladwell, Seth Godin. So it's really a story about your personal philosophies and how they guide you toward a more successful, happier life. That became the quest I undertook in this book.
Do you think that they had any idea that their story was so special, that they really bucked the system, if you will, and kind of did their own thing, which, again, on paper, probably looked crazy at the time, right? They gave up great jobs and go to Aruba. Well, I mean, everybody would want to do that. But financially speaking, probably seemed crazy. Where's that going to take you, right? Do you think they realized that this is something special, that they did something special here?
They did not then and they do not now. And
really,
I know that because I just got back from Aruba and we filmed the last of the documentary shoots. So this book is being made into a documentary film.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's talk about being a beginner. Now I'm a producer director all of a sudden trying to learn documentary filmmaking, a lot to find out. We had our first sit down, all three of us in front of a camera last week. And I said to them, I've asked you millions of questions over the past 3 years. Why don't you ask me a question? And one of them said, I still don't get why you found our story so special.
Wow.
And I answered it similarly to how I answered before for you, which was this is a book about your courage to do something that people thought was nuts, and that your friends in conventional careers gave you a year at best to make this thing work. But here you are 21 years later, and you cracked the code of living a joyful, authentic life. Now, isn't that what we all want?
Yes.
They looked at me and kind of mystified, but they, oh yeah, I guess we have done that.
They weren't chasing any of the things that many of us get hung up chasing. I mean, I guess it's hard to separate the fact that they were in Aruba. If they were in a less fabulous place, maybe it would stand out more to me. I mean, because Aruba, everybody, I mean, it's so gorgeous, but they weren't chasing the get rich. They weren't chasing to become this big conglomerate of surf shops. They were chasing a passion of what they love and sustaining themselves. So yeah, I guess that stands out as different. But it's interesting that they don't realize that. It's interesting that they don't think they did anything special, if you will.
I think deep down they realize now what they've done because they are exceptionally happy people, and that didn't come by accident.
Yeah.
And I also say that they didn't chase money, they didn't chase fame or expansion as goals, but in a way, it was those became a byproduct of their values, which was let's do something valuable for other people, and where we can hang out as friends and have a good time and work and play in a way that's seamless.
Yeah.
And because they had such great values, I think the shop grew into an iconic, magnetic spot on the island. And for many people, it's like a gathering place for the community.
Love that. Looking back now, you've written it, you're now putting together or helping with the film. What's a lesson that you wish you had, say, 40 years ago that you now get out of the book? Like when you're walking away, I have to believe you're changed. Something, yeah. So she's shaking her head for since we'll be audio, but something like this has to change you. You succeeded in this thing that you were looking for your whole life, which was to write a book. It's become this, super popular. Now you're making it into a documentary. What lesson do you get out of all of this that you can pass on, that you want to make sure people hear?
I think there are many lessons, but one of them is to listen more intently to the cues that make me happy, or what I was sort of destined to do in my life. And I was always listening to the external cues. I was a good rule follower, and I was a good student. And when I was in companies, I think I was pretty good at reading the signals of how to be successful and achieve. And all that's very good. I don't disparage any of that. But I think there's the inner voice that says there's more you could do here with your life. And that creative side that I kind of tamped down in my jobs eventually did come out, as we talked about before. But I didn't give it heed. I didn't give it enough attention. I was too busy kind of following the rules.
Yeah.
I wish I'd been more rebellious as they were in their late 20s, to answer your question. I wish I earlier on set out on a more courageous path for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does answer my question. I will say I was in my head for a minute thinking about how all the jobs you had circled around you being a writer. Like it was right there, and you pursued that stuff right out of high school. You went to college, and then you went and got a job doing the things that circle writing. So it was in there, in you. I'm just, I guess, stuck on what part of you thought you couldn't do it. Do you even know that? Maybe that's a question you can't even answer, but what was the voice telling you, or what was the story that you were telling yourself about not being able to be a writer?
Oh boy, I guess there were a number of demon stories that I was telling myself. One was that my own personal perspectives, my own personal stories are not that interesting to people. That I'm not really that creative. It has to be perfect. Okay, here's another one.
Yeah.
So if I'm a real writer, shouldn't this just flow? Shouldn't I be this remarkable muse and create beautiful words on the page every day? No, that is not case for many writers. So I had to get
Yeah.
that. And I basically did a George Costanza. I don't know if you saw that Seinfeld episode where he does the opposite of everything he always thought he should do.
No.
He orders, chicken salad versus tuna. He tells a young woman that he's single and living with his parents, and it all leads to great things. So I decided I'm going to reverse my usual habits about being a writer or non-writer and approach the book with experimentation, a view that I don't have all the answers. And yes, I'm creative enough. I'm going to make this happen.
I love that. And we often talk about approaching things with curiosity instead of judgment. And that's what you basically just said, right? In other words, but it's allowing ourselves to be the novice, to try something out, to see what it feels like, without judgment. Just be curious like we were when we were kids. So it's interesting that that's sort of how you felt as well without really even knowing it. And that happened for you. So how has your life changed since writing the book? Are you the same old, same old? Are you the Marcia before the book? Or would you say you're a different person now?
Well, I'd say that I'm coming out of hiding a little bit.
Love that.
Podcasts like this is a step for me, a leap for me. And I would also say in other parts of my life, I have more curiosity and less judgment. So an example is I've always played classical piano since I was very young. I studied it. And I gave up on it a while ago because I had a very bad recital. I basically lost my way and I forgot part of the piece. And I vowed never again to perform in front of people and doing piano work. And after this book, I said, well, that's just dumb. I love music. I love playing what I play. And I went back to it. I got a new teacher who's been remarkable. And I performed recently. It wasn't the best thing in the world, but I had such fun because I said, well, this is me in the moment being as creative and musical as I can. Similarly to the book.
Yeah.
This is in the moment writing the best book I can at this moment in my life.
I love that. And realizing that it's not the end of the world so what if you mess up, right? The goodness, I keep saying this partially so I'll remind myself, but partially so for other people as well. But the magic happens outside our comfort zone. And I didn't find that out until late as well, like into my 50s. So when you talk about, coming out of being invisible and trying to show up like on podcasts or whatever, I talk in recent episodes about still being scared to post on some places because I'm, a bigger audience might see me. Gosh, you just got to keep pushing. And that's what I keep doing to myself. But when you do, all these doors continue to open up. They just continue to open up and open up. And the reaction that we have in our heads that we think is going to happen, like you're playing the piano. I mean, what, the audience going to stand up and boo you? I mean, that's not going to happen, right? What's the worst that can happen? But in our heads, we have these crazy stories.
Yes.
But they aren't true. They just aren't true.
Yes.
So I'm so glad for you that you got out there and you did that. Is there anything else that you'd want to share with people about the book or about your journey that we didn't touch on?
I just am a very big believer in imperfect timing. So I always thought I would write a book in my 20s or it was over, or then it became my 30s. And now here I started in my 60s, a book, and there's no such thing as perfect timing.
No.
And I think you have to have enough life experience and perhaps crises to lead you to a point of, I'm ready to do something different. It gives you bravery when you realize you're running out of time.
Yeah.
And that you're tired of compromising yourself.
Yeah.
So I would leave it with that there's always a room to grow and there's always room to take another step in a different direction.
I love that. So tell us, when will the film be out?
It looks as though it will be out this year, which is 2025, of course, and it will be entered into film festivals, and I'll definitely keep people posted on it, and I'd be happy to share it when it is available. It's a nice companion to the book.
Awesome.
It tells a different side of the story.
And the book can be found in bookstores, Amazon, all the normal places?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're welcome to go on. People are welcome to go on my website. I offer 3 free chapters there, and also a report coming up soon on a guide to joyful living based on the book. So I'd be happy to share those with readers who go to my website, which is littlegiantbook.com. www.marciaheath.com.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your story and for believing in yourself and showing up and writing the book. Congratulations.
Your questions were wonderful. I appreciate them very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming and talking with me.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Message in the Middle. I hope you found something in this conversation that reminded you that you're not alone and that midlife isn't about winding down. It's about waking up. You're not done. You're just becoming. If this episode speaks to you at all, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps other women find this community and this podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.